Okay, today my topic is about light management for greenhouse crop production. So today I will cover these three main topics. What is light, which is the basics about light and how to measure them, and then when do we need supplemental light? As example in Texas, because most of you coming from Texas, although we do have participants from out of the states, and then if we need a supplemental lights, then how much do we need? So for the purpose of making money, not wasting lights. So first thing first, what is light? Well, light is electromagnetic radiation. So in other words, light is a form of energy, and light consists of photons. Photon is particles, and for example, you see this beam, the sunlight beam contains a lot of photons, and then plants use this light energy converting chemical energy, using CO2 in the air and then waters and nutrients from the root system, and then converting to light energy to chemical energy, which is the carbohydrate. So light actually has three dimensions: the light quantity, light quality, and light duration. Light quantity, which means the intensity or the amount of light that the plants receive, and that would affect mainly the biomass accumulation. And today I will focus on these aspects because light is really a big topic. One talk, like 30 minutes talk, would not cover this much. So, and then of course, light quantity not only affects the biomass accumulation, it also has minor role in controlling the morphology and also flowering. And light quality, which is the spectral distribution, mainly affects the morphology of the plants. And of course, the light quality nowadays with LED, research has been going on so much, and we already found that light quality would affect also biomass accumulation and also flowering. For example, recently studies show that UV light, UVA, or above the visible light, far red light, this would also contribute to biomass accumulation. And then light duration, which is in outdoor day length would also would affect flowering. So you see there's long day plants, short day plants. For example, poinsettia, if you grow in the greenhouse or outdoor, it will only flower or becoming the red at this certain time, this certain location. Those are the photo period or day length effect. So light also to plants as a energy and a signal source. So as a energy source, it affects photosynthesis, as I mentioned earlier, and also provide heat. And as a signal source, it will affect the morphology, photomorphogenesis, and also affect the secondary metabolite, which is healthy promoting bioactive compounds. For example, we all love fruits and vegetables because these fruits and vegetables contain so much nutrients, so much bioactive compounds that would be good to your health. And that's how light quality would affect that. Now, with controlled environment, we can control that. We can change the light spectrum to produce nutrient-dense crops, as earlier our Center Director, Dr. Ling, mentioned. So first, if we wanted to manage light well, we first needed to understand the light. For here, today we emphasize on sunlight. So this is the sunlight, solar radiation. Solar radiation, actually 97% is from 280 to 2800 nanometer. And among these, less than half is visible light. This is useful for plant photosynthesis. And more than half is actually just giving you the heat. And remember that, that's why here is heat. This much is all heat. That's why it is so difficult in summertime to cool down a greenhouse, especially if your greenhouse is only single layer plastic or single layer glass. Then you can imagine how much light you are receiving. And then if it's a closed system, that would give you tremendous heat. So, and that's the sunlight, if you are interested in, that's the sunlight, the ratio, blue and green, red and far red ratio. That is the solar known measured under that conditions. And here is the visible light that you just saw in the sunlight. That's the visible light. And you probably always hear photosynthetically active radiation, which we call PAR range or PAR sensor. Have you heard anything like that? Okay, good. And the whole range we also called physiologically active radiation, because plant responds to UV light, UVA, UVB, and also far red. Now, how do we measure light? So we need to, there are three systems to measure light. The quantum system and the photometric system, and then the radiometric system. So the quantum system is the one that related to plants, to plant photosynthesis. And that's the one that you should use when you are growing crops, not the other two, but I'll tell you how to convert them later. So quantum system is evaluating the number of photons in the PAR range. Remember that in the first slide I showed you those light consists of photons. So the quantum sensor is counting the photons in a defined range, which is the PAR range, which is the range that is useful to photosynthesis. And in the unit, so micromole per square meter per second, and using this mole, 1 mole, this probably back to your chemistry in middle school, so which is a very large number. And for instantaneous, we use micromole per square meter per second, which is 1 millionth of the amount of 1 mole. And so sunlight, these are the number you can remember. Sunlight at noon, the maximum is around 2,000. And of course, depending on location, maybe differ slightly. That's, I mean, the ambient from the solar radiation. And here is the photometric. Photometric actually evaluates the light according to its capacity to produce the visual sensation, which is based on your human eye. So, and the sensation range is this, and the peak is 555 nanometer, which means nowadays if you're using red LED, even though the intensity is very high, but to your eye, it's not as bright as it actually is. So remember that, so that is not a good way to measure. If you have a meter that show you foot candles or lux, which is not appropriate. So for plant science, you need to use the quantum sensor. And then the radiometric system actually converts radiant energy to heat or electricity. Even nowadays, all the weather station, actually the data show you this system. Like in Texas A&M, texaset.tamu.edu, if you go to that website, you will see the light data. They gave you a summary per day is megajoule per square meter per day. So, and that actually you can convert. If that's the only sunlight you are receiving, then you just multiply by 2. Then you get mole per square meter per day. So, and the unit for radiometric system is watts per meter, which is the instantaneous ones. And here you probably see where is the time unit. And actually the watt is joule per second. So joule is the energy unit. So that's how this sensor is measuring. It's measuring the energy, the electricity. and using parameters to measure. And most parameters, they are measuring from 300 to 2800 nanometer. But the many parameters like we have actually is only to 1200 nanometer. So that is for the radiometric system, and you can convert that. Now, how to convert? This is the mixed conversion between, if you know the light source, if it's sunlight, daylight, or blue sky, is a little bit different. So between the radiometric system, watts per meter to micromole per square meter per second, that's the instantaneous light intensity conversion. And then here between the lux and micromole, and then the photometric and then radiometric system. So these are the rough numbers, and that if you wanted to see the publication, which is Hot Science, published in more than 2 decades ago. So, and if anybody wanted this information, if you email me, I can send you a copy of my presentation. So, and now, instantaneous light intensity is important, but actually plant growth is more related to the total amount per day, which is the daily light integral we call. So here is the imaging, so like a graph, schematic graph showing you if you have a per square meter area and the total photons received in this area, and within this power range, 400 to 700 nanometer, that per day, that's the daily light integral. So, and how to get this number? And as I said earlier, from the weather station data, if you see the megajoule per square meter, then you just multiply that number by 2, then you will get a rough number of DLI, daily light integral. So now, do we need a supplemental light? So with that, we wanted to know how much light we are receiving. So this is the daily light integral map. You can Google DLI map, then you will find this map provided by American Floral Endowment. And if you email them, they will send you a hard copy. And they supported this to the research, and the PI is Dr. Jim Foster from Clemson University. They have updated the map right now, but even the old map is very close. So if we look at close up, so this is July and August. So how much Texas is going to receive? So from West Texas to East Texas, you're going to have West Texas, of course, you receive more light, 50 to 55. That's very high, and of course the highest month would be June. And then July is also very, July and August, they all very high. And then, of course, that is not needed for supplemental light. And then you see how much light we are receiving, which later I'll show you this is actually more than plant need. Now, look at November and December. So in Texas, the Dallas area we are receiving is November is 15 to 20 or 20 to 25. So that's the light intensity, ambient light intensity we are getting. And then here we actually measured, I actually got this data, got this number from the weather station in Plano, which is texaset.tamil.edu. And you can see the past 3 weeks in November, the average is 19, but we have like 1/3 of the time, which is below 20, and some day we're below 5. So which is the raining day, then we get so little. So these days, definitely you need a supplemental light. And then inside a greenhouse, actually, you would get much less, because this would depend, the light depends on time of the year, time of day, and the locations, which is the latitude. As we just saw this map, different location, you're gonna get different light. And then glazing material, which Ling mentioned, also glazing material actually would affect the amount of light you're gonna receiving. And this structure, if you have a lot of structural hanging baskets, and if you have supplemental light, if the canopy is too big, that's gonna block the sunlight, which is not good. So, and greenhouse orientation certainly gonna affect. And then management, crop management. If you have a lot of plants close by, the density is high, then each plant receiving gonna be less. So all this is gonna affect. But in a general rule, actually is, if this is ambient and then inside the greenhouse is about half, 50%. But even the new greenhouse, you have the fewest structure in the greenhouse, you probably still gonna have a reduction about 30%. And it can be as much as 70% depending on how your greenhouse look like. So keep that in mind, about 50% you're gonna get from the ambient. So then, how much light do a plant need? So here is also some rough numbers. For example, this is the low light requirement crops, which is like a forage plants, very small seedlings. And this red line is the potted flowering plants. So the more light is better, and there's an optimal range. And then if you further increase, then actually it's not so good. And then the green light is the cut flower, or as a stock plants, you are taking plants from that plant, then it will, well, this was general rule, but it will have a higher saturation. And then the grain crop, this is the grain crop, actually there's no saturation here shown. And recent research shows like cannabis and hemp plants, actually so far they have no limitation. They compared with grain crops and cannabis plants, the photosynthesis rate, saturation rate is much higher than like rice and corn plants. So that's good news. If you wanted to growing cannabis or hemp in the future, you can use as much supplemental light as you want, and you still get efficient and growth. So that's old one. And here actually, Carla Garcia in this morning, she mentioned about the daily light integral, that there's a minimal DLI and optimal DLI. And I copied this information from their website, and they indicated that the data provided by Cornell University. So we do not know if this is solely research-based or they also collected from literatures, and most likely it's from literature, because one single university cannot do all this much research, that's for sure. So emphasize this again, lettuce minimum is 12 mole per square meter per day, and then max optimal is 17, and tomato and cucumber, they can up to 30 is the optimal, and then strawberry actually have a narrow range, 17 to 20, and sweet pepper 20 to 30, just like tomatoes. And those from one source. I give you several sources. And here is from Michigan State, provided by Eric Ranko, who wrote an article in Greenhouse Product News magazines in May this year. So if you wanted to find the original article, you can go, here is the source. So here Eric actually provide a more detailed range. For example, the vegetative cuttings, the liners, early stage you need the target DLR is 4 to 6, and then later stage you need 6 to 10. And then for seedlings, similarly, early stage 6 to 10, and then finish stage you need 10 to 15. And this morning, Ling emphasized about the temperature control for young plants, but here actually light is very important. If you only increase the temperature, you're gonna have a very weak plant. A very good example is poinsettia. If you don't have enough light and you increase the temperature, you're gonna have very tall poinsettia plants, and also the branch is gonna be very easy to break. So that's gonna happen, and also you're gonna have thin stem. That's not a good crop, so indication of not enough light. So there's a ratio between light and temperature. So if you increase the temperature, and if the temperature is still within this optimal range or linear range, not suboptimal, then you need to proportionally increase the light so that you have a good crop. And here, and leafy greens, Eric also indicated as 12 as a minimal, so which is consistent with Cornell data. And shrubs, cut flowers, and fruiting vegetables, which is tomatoes and cucumbers, and minimum 15. And the Cornell University says the optimal is 30. So that's also agreed on that. This is another table that provided by Purdue Extension, and Lobeto, actually Lopez is the PI who was at Purdue University and produced these articles, and he's now actually at Michigan State University. And they have this yellow means minimal acceptable quality, and green is good quality, and then red is high quality. And these are all the ornamental plants. So I would not go one by one for these ones. And recently, the professor from Netherlands, you know, Netherlands is much dark than here in the US. They have short day lengths, and also the light intensity is not so good in winter time. And they actually provide very accurate data. And there's a rule of thumb, of industry rule of thumb, which started by the Netherlands group. And they say 1% less light means 1% lower yield. And then this provided by a professor from Wageningen University, and I just copied these, and they said the data from literature and from growers. So I believe this data because they have much darker months in winter time. So you increase, if you reduce the light intensity, and how much yield gonna be reduced. Here is lettuce gonna be 0.8%, and radish 1%, and cucumber, tomato 0.7 to 1. So you see, it makes sense. So that's actually very reliable data. Also, from our own research, we grow sweet basil. We use a few years ago, we grew sweet basil indoor and use fluorescent light. And we have different daily light integral treatment. Oops. And then here you see we from 9.3 all the way to almost 18, and we found that these three treatments is not different, which means over 12 mole per day. That's the maximum. If you continue to increase, you would just increase your electricity. But as a benefit, there is as a benefit, we did measure the health promoting compounds. We found that linear increase. But if you wanted to make money, and consumers right now, of course, they just yield is number one. And some of the active compounds, actually, when you increase, the taste actually is not increasing. Actually, you get some bitter taste, which is not good, right? So probably 12 mole is the maximum or the optimal. And then here's the example. Just wanted to show you. I have a similar example a lot from our own research, and also from here is greenhouse grower. You see in 6 mole per day and 19 versus 19 moles per day. You see the plant look completely different. The more light would have more flower, more branch. So high quality potted plants. And another example I wanted to give is for cuttings for producing young plants. Again, Ling emphasized on temperature control. Here showing you how light can also affect the quality and also production time. and here is New Guinea impatient cuttings, and they have daily light indigo from 1.3 all the way to 10.8. And these are considered marketable cuttings. And these 16 days you reach this much with 4 to 5 moles per day. And then if for this group, if you increase the daily light indigo, and to reach this stage you only need 13 days. And then for this low daily light indigo, to reach this stage you need more than a month. So you see the increase in daily light indigo gonna make sense. So in this case, and so much talking about the amount of the crop needs, and now we come to how much supplemental light do we need. Again, I wanted to start with basics, and this is the light response curve. So the photosynthetic rate in response to the light level, the irradiance level. Which is the light intensity. This is instantaneous ones, not the daily light indigo ones. And this is so when you increase the light and you increase the photosynthetic rate, and there is this range called the linear range, which means 1% increase is gonna increase 1% of photosynthesis. And then if you further increase, then your increase in photosynthesis is gonna be slowed down. And then to some point, no more increase, which we call light saturation point. And the light saturation point and compensation point, the curve, the shape of the curve actually depending on which crop you are growing. And again, for example, leafy greens, low light, for this saturation point is about 300 micromole per square meter per second. And then for cannabis, it would go up to 1,000 and even 2,000. So now, so how much, if net is determine how much light is needed, we need to know how much you are receiving from sunlight. As we already show you the sunlight, and then you need to consider how much you're in the greenhouse. If you can have a sensor inside the greenhouse, that would be best. Then you know how much light. Of course, you needed to measure on the bench level where the plants are, not on top of it. The distance is gonna make big differences. So at the bench top, how much light you are receiving, and then depending on which crop you are growing, then you will see what's the difference if necessary. And then if necessary, then how much is the difference? If it's too low, for example, you need, let's say 3 mole. 3 mole, then how could you provide this 3 mole per day? You can either with this light intensity for 8 hours, or 3 mole, let's see here, you can have 50 micromole per square meter and for 16-hour supplemental lighting. So this is the information from light management in controlled environment. Dr. Paul Fisher did this calculation, so you can use this as a guide to start. So now, what you probably wanted to know, what lamp should I use to supplement the light? Traditionally, greenhouse supplemental light, we use high pressure sodium lamp and metal halide. Those are the lamp we call high discharge lamp, so HID lamp. And these lamp actually have lower efficiency. But nowadays, there's so many LED lights, LED fixtures in the market. So how do you select those? And of course, you need to consider the spectrum, what is usage for. If supplemental light, then you need to increase the light. For example, red and blue light usually have better efficiency compared to white LED, which is the full spectrum, but also depending on which companies. The efficiency, I mean converting electricity to use for photons, which is the power range, photosynthetic photon efficiency, so this PPE. And then nowadays, many good LED companies, they would have provided this efficiency, micromole per joule. So which joule is the electrical energy per converting to the photons. And then of course you need to consider about the cost and other things, durability, easy to installation, and also I mentioned earlier, if it has a big fixture, you don't want that. So depending on your usage, and nowadays there are LEDs for indoor farming, also for supplemental lighting, the green cost. So you can buy according to these purposes. And here is information again provided from by Eric Ranko, Michigan State University. He wrote an article in 2018 July, which is again Greenhouse Production News magazine. And here he provided this list of high pressure sodium lamp and different LEDs. These are just an example, not all of them. Please understand that. This is the efficiency. When they measure this is they measure the power, and this is the photosynthetic photon flux. That's the light intensity, and here is the efficiency. So the highest efficiency back then is 2.59. Actually nowadays it's up to 3.0. So a few months gonna make a big differences. And since there are so many LED companies, I would recommend, if you wanted to purchase LED, if they don't even have this number in their specifics, then probably you do not want to try, because nowadays you're supposed to have these numbers in order to be efficient, you know. And then here I wanted to mention, because today we talked about many things, temperatures, nutrients, to be efficient in supplemental lighting or use your even indoor source lighting efficiently, then you need to understand that you need to keep the other growing conditions at optimal level, or at least not at limiting level. And you probably heard this law of minimal principles, which is long time ago. This is about the nutrient elements. For example, the plants need, Dr. Gu mentioned about the plants need macronutrients and micronutrients. If there's one nutrient that is limiting the plant growth, then your growth is going to be slowed down. And not only nutrients, other things, for example, a CO2 concentration, which Carla Garcia mentioned, and temperatures, and these factors, if any of them is slowing down, is at limiting factors, then your plant's gonna be slowing down. Especially if you wanted to invest in supplemental light, buy expensive LED lights, and then pay the electricity bill, high electricity bill, you wanted to make sure that you are getting the maximum of your investment. So you wanted to make sure these other elements are not at the limiting factor. And as example, this from our research, different ornamental plants, when we measure the photosynthesis in response to different temperatures, and 20 degrees Celsius means 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So you see most plants actually, the optimal range is 20 to 25 Celsius. So if you have high temperature, which means this is at suboptimal levels. So the take-home message I would like to say is that you have to have a proper measurement of your light level at bench level in your greenhouse if you wanted to increase your production, and you can determine the required daily light integral depending on the crop you are growing and also the growing stage. As younger plants at the early stage, they don't need higher levels, and you wanted to use supplemental lighting when the sunlight is low. When the sunlight is not low, then you add a light, it would make no use. So, and also make sure no limiting factors to effectively using supplemental light.